You're listening to Big World Network.
Kai's Inquisition, The Blight of Shadowfall. Season 2, Episode 9. Written and read by Ton Krakowski. The dawn greeted them with a smear of crimson splashed across churning deep gray clouds. "Oh, fine, you demon!" Kichi shook his fist at the sky as the party gathered at the mouth of the cave. "I'll call you Maelstrom from now on. You needn't remind me how you earned the moniker." Jack barely managed to resist the urge to run the old druid through and be done with his insanity. Instead, she adjusted the strap securing her falchion, her father's falchion, she reminded herself, and started walking south ahead of the others. Last night, Jack had been tempted to skewer the entire lot of them. All the talking and plotting and the incessant click, scrape, click as Chajek added his thoughts to the conversation had driven her to the brink of losing her temper. Had she cared enough to contribute her opinion, she would have told them that planning for the unknown is useless. There were simply too many variables. You had to be prepared to deal with whatever crossed your path at the time it presented itself. She lived in the moment, and had little patience for those who did not. "Hold on there, my emerald beauty," Reynard called to her, struggling to keep pace with her long stride. She stopped abruptly and turned to face the halfling. "Call me that again, and I will lop off your head." Unfazed by her threat, Reynard halted next to her and said, "As you wish, Jack. I want no bad feelings between us, and if you don't care for my little pet name—" "I don't," she interrupted. "Then consider it purged from my vocabulary," he finished without missing a beat. "Good. Now what do you want?" she asked, her voice tight and edgy. Jack's skin was crawling and she needed to be on the move, searching for battle, in order to feel like herself again. It had been too long since her blade had tasted blood. "Just some company that's not either cuckoo, sanctimonious, tongueless, or generally annoying." He held out a gloved hand to their path and said, "Shall we?" Jack grunted and resumed walking, this time at a much slower pace to compensate for their size difference. She glanced at the sky where the red of the sunrise had faded to a pink blush and the clouds had darkened and grown tall and ominous. The corners of her lips twitched up. She enjoyed a good storm. The rumbles and crashes of the thunder and the driving tempo of rain reminded her of combat. Reynard noticed her gazing at the sky. "The nutcase seems to think that the storm won't be an issue. He says that all the storms which develop in the center of the island, in the eye or whatever he calls it, never come inland. Just the same, I'd prefer it if we made the mine before nightfall." Jack didn't reply. "You don't talk much, do you?" "You talk enough for the both of us, halfling," she retorted calmly. He shook his head in frustration. "Fine, I'll cut to the chase. You are obviously the strongest of our little band of rejects. In many ways, you don't need the rest of us. I'm curious as to what convinced you to go along with this quest. Don't you have someone waiting for you in Adalom?" Jack shrugged, then ducked under a low-hanging branch as she walked. "No, there is nothing there for me." "Then why were you sailing there? I don't understand." Jack glanced back, saw that Chajek, Kai, Kichi, and Pia were closing the distance, and impetuously decided to confide in the rogue. She swept him up, laughing outright at his yelp of surprise, and placed him on her shoulder in a parody of how Kai carried Zephyr. She then returned to her normal stride, easily outpacing the others. "I wasn't sailing to Adalom. I was escaping Elosia," she said when she deemed them far enough ahead that they wouldn't be overheard. Feeling uncomfortable and embarrassed at being hauled around like a sack of grain by a woman, Reynard asked through clenched teeth, "Will you please put me down?" Jack did as he requested and said, "I wanted some privacy. You would not have been able to keep up. Just give me some warning next time, okay? Reynard groused. She laughed. Maybe next time I can hurl you at the enemy. The rogue's eyes slitted in thought. That might be a useful combat maneuver. After a moment he resumed their conversation. What were you running away from? My father, Jack sighed. He had arranged for me to marry an orc warlord named Karok. Nothing I said could convince him that I would rather die than be sold like a common whore. I was getting desperate when I met Pia, who offered to pay for my passage to Adalom if I worked as her guard. I took my father's prized falchion as my birthright and left. Reynard stared at her, confused. But didn't you want a husband, a good home, and children? I thought that was all women wanted. Jack grimaced. Can you really be that dense? Why would I want that? Look at me. Do I look like the motherly type to you? I want to choose my own path and fight my own battles. I am no one's property. Her voice fell, and a note of sadness wove through her words. I doubt he even cares that I'm gone. He would call me a mutt, tell me how I should kiss his feet in thanks that he found a man willing to take a half-breed like me. If anyone is looking for me, it's only to retrieve his blade. It's the only thing he ever cared about, and I hope its loss cuts him like 1,000 razors each and every day. They walked in silence for a few moments before Reynard said, You've got courage, defying your father like that. I would consider it an honor to face all manner of fearsome creatures in battle with you. We could watch each other's back. What do you say? Jack grinned. I'd like to see you try and keep up with me. They spent the entire day traveling through the jungle until they reached a shallow river that tumbled over the edge of a high cliff into the island's inner bay like a powder-blue ribbon. Just as Kichi had promised, the storm raging in the eye never made landfall, so their march was an uneventful one. Camp was set up for the evening just inside the tree line near the river. Before it had gotten completely dark, Kichi led them to the cliff's edge and pointed out their ultimate destination across the wide expanse of water. The northern tip of the crescent-shaped island was broken off into a single isolated islet, topped by a huge stone fortress. The angry storm clouds only served to heighten the sense of foreboding emanating from the structure like invisible waves of madness. The highest tower was lit by an enormous fire that shot into the sky. What's that? Kichi mumbled. Never seen them do that before. Kai answered him. It's a beacon. They are calling Ankor's followers home. This complicates things.
Music by Kevin MacLeod.
You're listening to Big World Network.